What about the movies you go and you see at the picture show today? They got the bang and the zoom and the whoa, but like they don't give you much of a think. They don't. They just, it's like a hit and run. It's like, the lights go out, peephole, and somebody grabs your willy. You'll say, "Oh, and see you later." You don't even know who it was.
Wow, that's a cool character. Whoever this is.
That's it. That's it. The old Jewish man. Hello and welcome to the Quackcast. This is Quackcast number 383. I'm Ozone Ocean, and with me is Pitface. Hello. And Tanserine. Hello, Tanserine.
Hello.
And Baines.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about the slow burn. Pauses. Stuff that doesn't just hit you over the head with action, this and this. Basically, decompression. That's what they call it in the comic world. Decompressed. You take your time to do stuff. All right. This is an interesting topic. This is totally created by Pitface. So yeah, this is so genius.
I was ranting.
Slowly created.
It was a good creation.
Yeah.
Good things came out of the rant. So, before we get into that, I've got to bring up the featured comic, which was something about gods, children of gods, I think. What was it? I did this. Yes, it's called Children of the Gods. Good one, Tans. Yes. So, listen to me talk about Children of the Gods. Hello, I'm Ozone Ocean, and my feature for the week was Children of the Gods. What happens when ordinary people suddenly become massively superpowered, possessed of abilities well outside of the dreams of any normal person? Comics tell us they become superheroes, or supervillains. This comic looks at it another way. They become gods, or at least that's how they think of themselves, utterly outside of normal human life and needs, not bound by any laws, rules, or conventions except their own. It becomes the job of a government agency to manage these powerful forces. Our story starts with a senior member of that very agency. The art is full color, and I think it's a mixture of digital painting and photo manipulation. Might also include some 3D assets as well, I'm not sure. But yeah, the photos I think are used, or digital 3D CGI images, and then there's a heavy amount of original painting done over the top to integrate those into new elements or just change them completely into something new. It's quite an interesting technique, and the art is quite striking, and the technique is very unusual. You don't see this used very often, so it's very notable because of that. Initially I thought it was all 3D work, but it's not. So yeah, it has a very interesting look. The story is drama, action, sci-fi, superhero. So there's a lot of stuff in there. It's not a comedy. There might be some comedic elements, perhaps in some places, but it's really not a comedy at all. It's quite a serious comic, and you take it seriously. It's well done. It's quite a compelling story. So I hope you enjoy Children of the Gods by Infinite Forces, and it's rated M for mature, because there are some mature elements in this, specifically people being killed and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I hope you enjoy it. Read it. And that was the Children of the Gods. Okay, lovely, lovely comic. Good looking. All right. So next up we have the featured music Gummalus has given us, and he has given us the music theme to stopwatches. Not stopwatches, but stopwatchers. So it's a weird kind of name.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, cool title. So the music is It's time to go. No time to get ready. Just head straight for the door. You've dilly-dallied around enough already. It's down to the crunch now. Get going now. Go, go, go. Which is totally in opposition to the theme of this Quackcast. But yeah, sometimes contrast is good.
Ooh.
So, take it away, Gun Wallace, stopwatches. And that was the music. Thank you for very much for that, Gun Wallace. Stopwatches by Stopwatches, rated E. So let's get back to the slow burn stuff. So we call it a decompression in comics. Decompressed. That's when instead of
out a really big, nice part.
Exactly.
You lose 20 pounds.
Yeah.
Just goes on for like 5 minutes as you empty yourself.
Yeah.
The pressure.
I've
take
seen
the
it
pressure
used
down.
like a slow burn is a positive phrase, right? Because of the burn part.
Yeah.
I've heard uncompressed storytelling in relation to comics. The context I've heard it in is always negative. It's like
Really?
you're not getting to like they're spreading a storyline over 100 issues.
It's generally neutral when I've heard it.
Oh, okay, I've always
Description.
every context I've heard it in has been like it's a bad thing. It's like
Wow.
get to the point, like get some story beats happening here. Like it's just you have one meaningless scene, then in your next issue you have another meaningless scene that kind of continues
But
that
yet,
subplot. You know,
but would that really fairly qualify as a slow burn or a slow development even? Because if you have scenes that are pointless and they go nowhere, then it's not about pacing, basically, or
exactly, yeah.
or
Or
how
it's a
you
failure
are-
of pacing, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
the uncompressed thing, that's how I've always heard it, at least wherever I've seen it. You know, it's not a good thing. It's not a slow burn. It's sort of a failure of
It kind of results
composition.
in either nothing really happening, and not nothing in the sense where, I have scenes where nothing is really going on, but there'll be things going on. There'll be tone, or there'll be atmosphere. There'll be, maybe minor setup of suspension, or like just immersing you in a world or an atmosphere or something, and just letting you kind of, waddle around in the pond a little bit. That's different than, say, for instance, not having anything in a scene to latch onto and just kind of sitting there, or the other end of it, which is maybe packing shit in a scene that doesn't matter, just space filler,
Yeah.
like I was watching this is a throwback, so I'm sure somebody must have seen it, but Alien Requiem, and I hadn't realized I had seen that movie before. Or Alien versus Predator Requiem. It's the second Alien versus Predator movie. And I hadn't realized that I had seen the movie before until after I started watching it. And there are some kind of neat fight scenes in there and stuff. You don't expect a whole lot from it. But I realized the reason why I didn't remember the movie is because of all this shit that it packs in between its actual cool alien and predator fight scenes. It's just rubbish. There's no point to it. There's nothing that I care about. You have, these stale representations of characters and problems, like who likes this realistic chick, and she's got a boyfriend who's all jealous and shit, and they don't do anything new with it. It just stuffs it in for melodrama. And so that's when pacing not only does that not have anything to do with what's going on, but it's just tripe and it makes things forgettable. So that's the problem in pacing, and that you have things going on. You don't have anything going on with the story, which is much different than when you have a scene where there's seemingly nothing going on, but you're immersing yourself. That other shit wasn't immersive.
Yeah.
Right.
It was
just filler. Yeah.
Yeah, filler.
Yeah, I mean...
Like tripe.
Tripe, yeah.
Or filler.
You don't want to bore people. If a slow burn should not be boring. That's when it's done wrong. And being a slow burn is not by definition boring. That's when it's bad writing. That's when it's boring. Something's badly done.
Yeah.
Having something a slow burn is okay.
Actually, I think you could have these. How did you call it? The negative version of a slow burn. The
uncompressed or decompressed. Yeah.
It could even happen when you have action-packed scenes, one after the other, and not leading anywhere, or not understanding what is going on. So you just see people throwing down. You see people badgering other people or blowing them away or whatever, and it doesn't matter. Nothing matters because it doesn't relate to the story enough, or it doesn't relate at all, and it is just there to be bombastic without substance. So again, you get bored. Again, you disengage.
Sure.
Because the story loses you in the interaction that you are doing with the story, because the story gives things to you, and you give back in your emotional reactions and your estimations of what's going to happen now.
Yeah.
Trying to predict how the story is going to go, like having your own little theories as you watch. So
that's a good point. Like Star Wars, not Star Wars, the prequels, that we always mention. That everything that's wrong, they represent. Fortunately.
The thing is, in general, if you find yourself watching without being involved, then you have bad pacing, or a series of meaningless scenes, or generally the story has stopped progressing, and you are watching stuff. That's all you are watching, rather than...
Yeah, I can think of being bored more often in a thing where it's very quick cuts. There's a ton of stuff going on. It's loud. It's action. It's blah 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 blah. It's a razzle dazzle, and I'm completely bored.
Yeah, the Daniel Craig James Bond film, the second one that he did, that definitely did that to me. I was just bored out of my head. Quantum of Solace or something.
Right.
I didn't watch it, so...
Yeah, that's one of those ones that just there's too much, and I can't focus on it. It's just tedious.
I really remember feeling that way during The Rock, although I like that movie a lot. There's that big car chase scene early in the movie.
Okay.
Like all really quick cuts, and it's like you can't tell what's going on, and it's just like...
It's a Michael Bay film, isn't it?
It's hard to look, kind of thing. Is it a Jerry Bruckheimer production? Maybe Michael Bay directed it. I don't remember.
That was an early one of him. Nick Cage.
Sean Connery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good movie, actually. Good action movie, but that part really bugged me.
It was drawn out a little bit more than it should be. And
It felt like it went on for hours. Yeah.
yeah.
Contrast that with that movie, No Country for Old Men. That scene in the convenience store with the coin. I think the first time you see that coin flip thing with Sugar or whatever his name is in the convenience store, and he wants the old man to flip the coin, and he's like sort of grilling this old man about his life, and it's just quiet tension. And I don't even know. I've watched it on YouTube, that scene. I tried to analyze it. Like, why is this so? Like, why am I terrified? The third time watching this, you know, and I don't know what it is exactly. Yeah, it's just like the tension and just the, you know, nothing's even really happening. It's just two guys talking. It was like terrifying.
And you know, now that you mention it, that picking that scene, that is, that even if you haven't watched the movie at all and you just watch this scene, knowing that this guy is very dangerous and everything hinges on the coin flip, is extremely engaging, suspenseful, iconic. But take that, the exact same thing, the premise, a very dangerous guy flipping coins to decide whether he's going to murder you or not. And it has absolutely no impact. And I'm talking about Two-Face in which
that's a good point.
Batman movie.
One of the Batman movies, Batman Forever.
Yes.
You know what you're talking about.
Was it Forever? Well,
Tommy Lee Jones, who's in No Country for Old Men also.
Yeah.
And like you would expect for him to be actually one of the most intimidating villains, because everything hinges on chance, more or less. So
right,
if we go by, and he is the most throwaway bad guy.
Oh man!
The other one, played by Jim Carrey, was actually scary because he is so damn insane and loud that you can see him drawing and quartering people while he's laughing.
Right.
But to go back to the comparison, it's not just the premise; it is how it's done.
Yeah.
The first one is the slow burn. It is quiet. It takes its time. It lets the realization of what might be sink in, and it doesn't hit you over the head with it. And it relies on you engaging through realizing that, okay, this might be the man's last moment on earth. And he doesn't even know it, because that's also another element. It doesn't know how dangerous this is. And whereas the other scene is very high octane, and it has a lot of razzle dazzle around it, and the guy, you know, emotes a lot and stuff, and does a whole show of tossing the coin and everything. And you are watching him and you're bored. It's like, okay, can we move on to the crazy person?
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah, it's overacted. So it takes
context,
away from the drama.
execution,
and it doesn't take the time. It doesn't take the time to build the scene up so that it will have the impact of the fright of the toy cost.
Yeah.
Oh, very good point. The most menacing, horrific films are the ones that do take their time to build up, and they're the ones that have that real effect on you. I remember watching several films of Beat Takeshi, which is the famous Japanese movie guy. He's famous for his TV shows Takeshi's Castle, which are totally silly and nothing to do with taking your time. That's just crazy Japanese people going da, 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 as they fall in buckets of leeches or trying to get through castles. But
Sounds good.
in his movies, he is like the Japanese Tommy Lee Jones. He's he's the Japanese version of what's his name? Not Tommy Lee Jones, but that terrifying guy who's in damn it, what's his name? Dark hair.
Scary guy, dark hair.
Yeah, he's
Just let him dangle a bit.
let me dangle. Okay, he's in The Duelists.
He's in the Jaws.
Keep going. Duelists.
Okay. Harvey Keitel. He's the Japanese Harvey Keitel. There we go.
Okay.
So scary guy, yeah. Anyway, so Beat Takeshi's in these films, and he builds up a lot of menace. He directs them too. And his character, like he's a member of the Yakuza or something like that. And he is by far the most terrifying character on screen. Not because of what he does, but because of the slow and assuredness of the character. And the way he lingers on things. And I've heard it described in these films, these slow moments it has as pillow moments, because you have like a scene of action or something, and then you have a scene when the camera rests on like scene of power lines or something like that, which you see in a lot of anime actually. They have scenes like that, you know. You'll have action and things are happening, and then there'll just be a scene of power lines for a while for no apparent reason.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And in Takeshi's films, it's the same kind of thing. You have these rest moments. And it helps to build tension. And it really, really does. He's so good at that. So, Fireworks, I recommend, if you ever watch a Beat Takeshi film for a good Yakuza thing where you've got a lot of tension and menace and that from the simplest kinds of moments. So, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, and actually now I'm thinking about what you're saying. I seem like a cut to something that is like the power lines or sky or birds flying across the sky, things like that, will also help the impact of the previous scene sinking, because you're thinking about that while you are watching something that doesn't give you any new information or new stimulation about the plot. So
exactly.
It takes a moment to let you process what you just saw, rather than immediately go to the next and perhaps lose some of the impact.
Yeah, you're not bouncing around to some new moment of action and so just hitting you with constant speed and drama, you know, like a Pacific Rift or something like that, when you can't take your eyes off the screen because you miss half the film. Everything's happening so fast.
Yeah.
That's done by a competent director too. That's not a shitty director who did that film, but it's just too much happening. Bright colors, the Wachowskis' Speed Racer, you know, everything. This film just races at 1,000,000 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Colors and lights, and you just miss it if you're not looking at it all the time. Which is, I don't think it's like some people say, okay, it's because you're old or whatever, and you're
I really want to enjoy a movie, old person.
Yeah, you're into films from a specific era, and you can't take these new films. Maybe that's a factor, because you do get inculcated into watching things in a certain way. If you watch a film from the 1940s or 1920s, they're done in a very different way. Maybe it's that.
Not even as far back as that, but as I was saying before, that I'm trying not to reiterate, you guys heard me say already, but as you know, the old sci-fi and horror films, like even back in like the 80s and early 90s,
Like
they
Alien,
were great at taking their time.
Yeah.
Alien is one of my favorite examples of this, because that's a slow movie, but I mean, even today when I watch it, I'm tense through the whole thing. You know, that movie is great at taking its time, and every one of those classic movies from that era that I can think of those thriller and horror and sci-fi movies and stuff like that. That tends to be what I watch.
Yeah.
That's why I qualify it like that. All of them take their time in that matter, at least for some scenes. Like, even with Predator, you know, it's a pretty high octane movie and stuff, but like a lot of that movie is them just kind of walking around in the jungle, and then you have the scene towards the end where Arnold, for that long stretch of time, is just getting ready to square off with the Predator. And the movie lets itself dwell on that for so long, and you just get really sucked into it. And it works so well. Whereas if they took those scenes and loaded them with a bunch of bullshit, it didn't quite work or sync up, and then all of a sudden, oh, there's a Predator fight, and then it happens, and then, like, even, you know, the fight itself even takes time. You know, it's not some big, it's climactic, it is, but it's not just some big, you know, you're not being hit by a fucking train of plot or anything like that, you know. It lets you even get immersed in that, and then you have, you know, how that ends with the explosion and everything. But those movies were just so good at taking their time like that, and I realize I really miss that in a lot of movies now. I miss it a lot.
And I think,
so,
I actually don't really agree with the excuse, because it is an excuse that you are too old and you can't watch the new movies, like the new generation is some sort of new species and doesn't process it the same way. Because, for example, take John Wick. It's a relatively recent movie. It's not for the old timers. But I think that the huge success that it had wasn't only the good choreography of the action scenes and everything. It was that it took the time. It had several scenes where you just see John Wick with his dog and his grieving process and all his quiet times and down times and his mundane daily living before there are any stakes for you to realize in the movie. Like when threat comes, you already have a very good familiarity with the character, and you like certain things. You have already liked the character, and everything the character loves are things that you love. So then, when the action picks up and it goes, you know, spiraling to the climax and it doesn't let go, it's okay, because you have had this slow time to get to know the setting, to get to know the character that you are going to be following, and to get to know his motivations and be on board, so to speak.
So giving you
and
time.
even towards the end, again, there are a few downtime scenes where, you know, all the weird mafia people are talking with each other, and there is a bit of a reset. And again, it takes its time to reset the atmosphere and everything else, and give you the time to breathe before you go in for the last laugh, which is, you know, the most bombastic stuff and everything. So it's necessary. You have to give the audience the time to process, even if you want to go for something fast-paced.
Yeah, you're right. Thinking about one of my favorite ones and why it works so well is... Oh, God, I'm getting echoes. Okay, so Conan the Barbarian is one of my favoriteest of all films. And that is done like very much like a spaghetti western, and spaghetti westerns were also, you know, they're fantastic because they take their time and they build up things. But say in Conan the Barbarian, you think, 1980s action film with Arnold Schwarzenegger, so it's just going to be non-stop, like, you know, gore and fighting and all that kind of stuff. You know, if you haven't seen it for a while, you think about it, that's what it must be. But if you go and watch it, you see that there are these really slow kind of build up moments, and they let the film build up in a very traditional way over a bunch of acts. You know, you have the first act and all that kind of thing, and they're really distinctly separate, and things sort of build up, and then you have this big moment of what happens, and then you move on to this, and you have these whole times where it's just like the characters running over plains. You know, they're just running into this beautiful wide expanse of these amazing plains, and you see the sky and all that, and they're not talking, nothing's happening, the plot's not advancing, they're just running over the landscape. Stuff like a whole bunch of the early film is just Arnold walking around slowly on a big wheel. Grinding great.
And think of the variety of ideas you see in there as well. Like there's the big main plot, of course, you know, which isn't all that, you know, spectacular, but it works. Simple works fine, you know. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you write a story or create something new. And what these stories did was they would have a good basic plot. Usually sounds good if you write it down on a paper in a sentence or two. And what they do is they take the space of the movie and just let it kind of explore. You know, they never feel forceful, do they? They don't feel like that they're trying to force certain scenes on you, or like,
yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
They just fill up the space.
But at the same time, they have neat ideas to. I'm not getting my shit out well, but
it doesn't.
It lets itself explore. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's not like they have. Okay, the film is 1 hour and 20 minutes, so we've got to pack in everything. And if you're not getting the plot, we're going to make sure that you get the plot. Now you're going to cut out every single scene that doesn't advance this. And you see this in DVDs now, if people still watch DVDs. But the thing is, you have the special features, you know, the cut scenes, or you have the commentaries. And often you listen to these damn commentaries, and these writers go, yeah, well, we're going to have this great scene here of these two characters sort of developing this, but we thought, that didn't advance the plot, so we cut it out. You know, that didn't respond well with the focus group, so we cut it out. And you think, that would have made it work so much better if you had that, because we're getting more of this interaction with these two characters that was so great, and that's what would make you love the characters, rather than just advancing your fucking plot. We don't really care about your central plot. We fall in love with characters. That's what makes us make a film.
Around it.
What's that?
Yeah.
I said it's the dressings around it.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that makes you love a film. You don't always have to get back to your central plot and your central storyline and hammer home what's happening, make sure the audience understands. Let us just live in the world a bit.
Yeah.
That can help us way more become immersed in a story than just trying to get us through from point A to point B.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Like desperately trying to not let anyone get bored, quote unquote, just by kind of like
and
bang,
if we let you live in the world, it helps suspension of disbelief, because the world feels real rather than a set from which the characters speed through, and generally it feels a little bit like a set, rather than something 3D where you could explore if you were there. So
exactly. I mean, okay, characters like Jay and Silent Bob, I don't really like the films that guy does that much. I can't remember his name. But say Jay and Silent...
Stanley Kubrick.
Yes, of course. The great Stanley Kubrick and his Mallrats. No, but so those kind of characters, if they were cut out, that would help the whole plot of the film and everything advance so much quicker. But because they're there and having their meaningless terrible one of the characters bantering, the other guy's just silent. That brings the film to life a lot more, because you've got these two absolutely meaningless characters just giving color to the film and atmosphere, and that helps build things up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they end up being what a lot of people like about those movies. That's the comedy version of like immersion, you know?
Exactly.
Like it's sort of the window dressing that people like, because, I mean, how incredibly original are most plots? Like, how many different things happen? It's like, I mean, like you guys were saying a moment ago, like it's kind of all about the specifics of it and the world that you're in and all that stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you bringing that up, actually, I can bring up a comic example. Something like that works well. And basically, I mean, if you think about it, that's what Judge Dredd is that Dredd is the central character. But a lot of times, especially in the older comics, he's not the center of the story. The world will be happening around him, and he'll kind of just be our inlet into it, or, you know, he's what kind of hinges all these things are happening around Dredd, and then he interacts with it, and then, you know, that's, you know, ends up being fun or cool or whatever. But it's kind of that Jay and Silent Bob thing where, like, it's just the world is happening and then the characters reacting to the world, but it's more about the world.
Oh yeah. And Judge Dredd is a pillar of the world. Yeah, as you say, he's not necessarily the focus of everything, and you've got all these other characters making it alive, making it come to life. Yeah. Which, say in Pinky TA, I have these scenes where I have so many scenes where I got a meeting or something, and Pinky's in the scene, and she's giving a speech or whatever. Yeah, and I got these characters going, blah, blah, blah,
That's
blah,
true,
blah.
actually.
Blah, blah,
I never
blah, blah.
realized that before. A lot of meetings in that comic. I never noticed that.
This character's going, blah, 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 talking away in the background. And it's that to me is a lot of fun, and I get to advance the plot in that way, in weird and different ways, or not advance the plot, but just lend color to things and give color to the plot, which I couldn't do without them. But it makes it not boring for people, I think, I hope, at least, because you've got this stuff happening.
It's fun to look at your characters in there and their little interactions.
Yeah.
Like, the weird little looks on their faces sometimes. You know,
weird
you just
expressions.
Have this little touch to your style that is just fun. You can make a character needing fun.
So yeah, it's fun to do that kind of stuff, and you're not. I used to get so worried because my comic has moved so damn slowly in so many ways, but that I wasn't advancing things at 1,000,000 miles an hour, that the plot wasn't shooting forward. But I've learned to enjoy the kind of stuff, you know, when you have characters, when you have the plot just moving slowly, and you have characters sort of just rabbiting on about something in the background. That's actually quite fun to do, and I look forward to those kind of things. Now, you don't have to have everything racing forward and moving. You know, now we're 2 weeks in the future in this page. Now we're three weeks, you know, blah, blah, blah. You know, everything's happened. You don't have to do that in a comic. Especially in a webcomic.
Right.
You have space. You have years to progress if you want.
Yeah. Take your time. Have fun.
Yeah.
If you're having fun, your readers are probably having fun.
True. Yeah, you've got so much time to play in. You may as well do it. Just Epic of Blitzov is one that does that. Slow. It's good. Go on, Tons.
Blitzoff does it, but
Oh, go on. Pit.
I was just gonna say, I was just thinking, when you consider its overarching plot, Putrid Meat takes its time a bit between when it starts and then Bones, and you know, coming to gripes with Exus, and then that whole shit happening and him going back to Septica. That takes a long time.
Oh yeah. There's so many different sort of side adventures and things happening in between.
I just didn't realize it because in my head it seems like it happens so quickly, but when I sit and really think about it, I think it takes its time. I don't know, maybe it doesn't, but I thought it did. It's got lots of little things that happen in between and little side adventures and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an enjoyable little journey. You take people on a journey, which is an important thing with a story. To take them on a trip and not just have them like think, oh God, when's this going to get to the point? Like when I'm talking, for example. But it's something you can enjoy while you're going through there. So the trip is the fun part.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. At least for the audience.
As a writer, I think that's what you got to aspire to. In films too, the films I enjoy are the ones where you're initially thinking, "Oh God, when is it? When are they gonna like get to the point where it's going to be good?" Not that, but then you start to think, "Okay, actually, this is the fun part. This whole journey part is the part I enjoy. That's where things are happening." People talk about, say, Lord of the Rings. Oh, it's them walking everywhere. It's just them walking to get somewhere. But you've got to realize them walking is the story. It's what happens and they're talking and all that kind of thing. When you get into that, that's what's fun. It's not the whole crap about the ring and Mount Doom and all that. You're a fucking idiot if that's your focus. That's not it.
Do you know how exhausting that would get if those... like the entire trilogy was just about the ring and what's going on with the ring right now, and that'd be exhausting.
Yeah, who could care about that for that long?
Oh my God. And so much modern fantasy. I quit modern fantasy because they do that. It's just dread. You have to, everything is like something new is happening, someone's going to be killed, you have to make the reader focus on this and that. So yeah, and the whole big awful thing that's hanging over everyone's head. Yeah. So definitely this whole idea.
Everybody's story has an awful thing. If you're going to just focus on the awful thing in your story, it's going to make it forgettable.
Yeah.
It's not going to stand out.
Well, it's going to make people not look forward to reading it. Because when you're reading a big long fantasy story, usually they're like 600 pages, 1,000 pages. It takes forever to get through these damn things. You have to keep going back to it. You don't read it in one setting. And if you're always going back to the awful, horrible thing, then it's not as fun anymore. So, yeah. Maybe I'm diverging too much from the point.
No, I don't think so. I think that's part of the point. It all, just do it. Diverge. Who cares? It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. That's the exact point you were making. There you go.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Shit. That is the exact point I was making. Yeah.
Explore.
Precisely.
Do you guys find a problem in webcomics, though? Or say... like independent films or student films or stuff like that a lot of them, I've seen a fair number, and especially for the non-genre kind of films, if you will, like the dramas and stuff like that, it'll be a lot of immersion, but you don't care.
Oh, in what way?
Well, you're looking at like some lady cleaning her house. I just pulled that example out of nowhere. I don't know why.
It's a good example.
Yeah. or you're just seeing like the quiet life of someone and you don't care. Yeah. Or pages and pages of a webcomic go by and nothing's happening. And in theory, you're seeing a world, but sometimes you're right. Immersing in it and it's you're interested, but other times it's like, okay, it's like, is something going to happen?
Well, in that
What is
example, it's boring you, and we did sort of bring this up from the start. There's a difference between quiet moments and immersion and being boring.
Right.
And
True.
that's what so many things do. I don't know whether they're trying to go for that immersion or they just don't realize how tedious they are. I don't know.
I mean, I would guess if they're thinking about it, then they're probably going for it. Like, obviously, they want to show this character. They want you to know this character, or they just don't have enough story. And they have to fill a certain amount of time or something.
Yeah, so there has to be a balance. You're right. You can't just go, okay, we're just going to go full slow-mo, full slow stuff, full immersion, and that's all. We don't care about anything else.
You
It's
still
like,
have to think about what you're doing. You still have to try.
Yeah. I guess that's where it gets murky to me, because I've seen stuff and been bored, and I've seen other stuff that's just as slow burn or slower and been, it's slow,
riveted.
but there's a burn.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're riveted.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm really into this character, and I know something's going to happen. What's going to happen, kind of thing, or what's going to happen when they react to this, or it depends on context. But I'm thinking more of the beginning of a story where you don't really know anything yet.
Yeah, you just
And it's kind of how
bored
it's
to watch.
done, and it's sort of it's a little mysterious to me in a way. Like, I can see my own reaction to something that's working or not working for me, but as a reader, as an audience member.
It's a good point. We've
tough.
talked about things like before, just to give a different kind of example of something is okay. We've talked about stories that tell you everything and give you a text dump, and we've said, oh, that's bad, versus stories where you're left to work out for yourself, and we've sort of come up with the impression of this is good and you should do more of that. You should let people work out for themselves. But there's so many stories that go way too hardcore on you should work it out for yourself, and it turns out it's just, I don't know what the hell is going on in this story. Nothing makes sense to me because you're not told anything. So you can, as in your example, go way too far in the other direction and just make it dull, make it boring. There has to be a balance. And you have to intelligently look at the story and think, does this work?
Yeah, and I guess it's very individual to the story, and if it's a comic, like to the art style, how you compose shots are going to keep people interested. It's like all that kind of stuff, right? It's like, I like this. Like, there's a Epic of Blitzoff is one. I'm rereading Epic of Blitzoff, Pitface's comic, from the beginning, because webcomics you like read one page at a time, kind of thing. So like, I'm gonna go back.
Yeah.
See this from the beginning and
stitch it all
it's
together.
really you're into it.
Discombobulated.
But you're into it from the beginning. It's like, as a reader, it's like you want to know what's going on. It looks interesting, like the shots, the camera shots, if you will, are interesting, and it's like just whatever how it's put together. It's like you want to know what happens. And I forgot about those very friendly cannibals with the very polite attitudes. I was like, I missed that the first time. I was like, this is kind of cool. But that's a whole other story. Yeah. But it's kind of like, panels that pop out at you in whatever given way, or, frames or compositions in a movie or whatever that sort of grab you.
That make a slow burn work.
Yeah, they make it, exactly. Yeah, they do. They give you a tone or a vibe to kind of be interested in. We were talking about The Thing, the John Carpenter movie, before we were recording, and how I think like just the way it looks and the way it's shot and the way just the whole flow of it is like bleak and compelling, kind of from the very first shot, kind of thing.
And you
not
need
necessarily the spaceship coming down, but the first shot of the actual story, and when you're in the Arctic.
Yeah.
And it's the wolf running across the field and the helicopter, and it's just like, what's going on?
And you need that to show, for example, the fact that these guys are all alone. They're isolated. There's nothing out there, and there's nowhere to run. So that has a
Yeah,
point.
it's doing that at the same time. It's establishing the whole context of the. Yeah, that's true.
And
It's all
it's
just done
also
really well.
contrasts beautifully with the frenetic, harsh action that you do get in the film. So there's a lot of good reasons to have that slowness.
Yeah.
Rather than having someone just cleaning for 10 minutes.
Yeah, that doesn't
If
tie
you have
into any
somebody
kind of
clean
theme.
for 10 minutes, then you have to, sounds stupid to say, well, you have to make it work, obviously, but like you were saying, like, you know, the shots matter, you know, just like actors, characters matter in your comics and shit like that, you know, all of that together. And it's not saying that you have to make all of these elements perfect in order for a scene to work. Not by any stretch of the imagination. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just think about them. Just utilize them. Don't just try to fast forward or skip along until you can get to some big fight scene or love scene or something that you have a heart on about just because you want to draw a few panels about it. You know, put your heart into that and put your heart to the scenes in between it. You know, they won't come out perfect. That's fine, but make them count.
Yeah.
Just by being,
just
by showing, make them show up.
Yeah, and then the scene that you are jonesing for is also going to have more of an impact for your audience and yourself, I think. If you wait.
Yeah, it'll actually fit into everything that comes before it, kind of thing.
It will, and often these getting there scenes can have surprising impact, and they can become fan favorites. You know, you can get Jay and Silent Bob kind of out of these kind of things. That can be where your goal actually is, rather than your big, you know, reveal, which no one remembers. No one cares about. No one cares about much about Mallrats except for Jay and Silent Bob. You know, there's those kind of things. So, yeah, you've got that kind of stuff. So,
and I agree with what you said, too, about not trying to make it perfect. And not, I mean, I'm hoping people won't listen to this and then hesitate. I could have that reaction. I could see myself like, oh, I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to make it right or make it perfect. Or that's okay. Because really, there is no perfect, like, stories and tones are all so individualistic, you know, like there's no real perfect way to do everything. It just kind of doesn't work that way. Just put your
mind to it. Just blend it, you know, visualize what you're trying to do. And if you have a scene that's coming up that you can't quite visualize, either change it to something that you feel is a little bit better, or just sit there, you know, and figure out what isn't working about it. Don't just skip over it. It's like, oh, well, I have this piece of exposition in this scene that I have to get out. Therefore, I have to write it, but I'm just going to chuck it out there and just fuck everything else that's going on. Like, you kind of have to do that now and then just to move on. But even just then, just like, I don't know, try to make it compelling looking somehow, or think about where they are, or, you know.
And sometimes it's going to be like, this just feels right. Like this character washing dishes for 2 pages. This is like, maybe you can't explain it to yourself even, but you're like, this is what I want. You know, this is something about this is right.
Do it.
Yeah, exactly.
It can work.
Yeah, giving it a little thought.
Well,
and the right story, it's exactly what it needs.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Unless you copy paste every panel. Don't do that.
I've seen that. Believe me, I have seen it.
But
lived through it.
I think that you can use exposition as a very nice backdrop upon which you can have the character's emotions be the point of engagement while you are getting across the information, especially if it's being used actively by the characters rather than have one of them spout it off like a bot. No, and now I'm gonna tell you about this for no apparent purpose. Like when I was initially making Without Moonlight biggest issue that I had was that a lot of the history is basically unknown to an international audience.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I couldn't have the characters make references that they would normally make if it was intended for a Greek audience that would get it, because everybody knows some basic things. So I had to have exposition, and a big reason why I made Basil a lawyer is to have him be a worthy bastard, basically, who over explained everything in his effort.
Oh.
In his efforts to support the kids, and I made him the support for the kids because that would be the easiest way to get him to talk about things that he would normally talk about and that the audience had to know. So some of the scenes where they just sit around and talk are intended to help the kids emotionally, so we learn about the kids and their wants and their wishes and the fears and everything. And at the same time, while he is probably, or not probably, where did that come from? Anyway, while he's supporting them or guiding them or just generally being a mentor to them, he is also communicating data that I wouldn't have any other way of naturally infusing the story with. And
Right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's well done. You
That's
make
good.
use of
Yeah.
him.
yeah,
I can remember these
Yeah.
Isaac Asimov robot novels. I don't know if you guys have read them. The Elijah
Mm.
Bailey. They're mystery
No.
novels well, they're really good. Just saying.
He's a great
But,
writer. I believe you.
He's really good. I really like them. But he'll have a lot of scenes in those books. There's 4 books, I think, and in the 2 later books, especially, which are a lot longer, he'll have these long scenes where the detective will very deliberately go through all these facts and present, do exposition about the state of the world and stuff like that. And it's really funny, the way he sets it up, or 2 robots talking to each other, or the detective talking to the robot, where there'll be so much extra exposition in what he's saying, but he always sets it up as well, you're a robot, right? So you'll have the extra patience to let me think out loud and go through this very deliberately and obviously. And it's kind of funny to read that. It's I see what you're doing. But it works really well, because then what they go through is very important to the reader. So to sort of understand this kind of sophisticated train of thought that the speaker is going through.
And he might be explaining stuff about the world that would normally be unnecessary to another human because they already know it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's stuff that they wouldn't need to do in that world. Yeah, because they would already know that. Yeah. So
It's
it
a good
works.
technique. It's a very, very clever technique. And yeah, Asimov was a fantastic writer. I highly recommend anything written by this guy. Genius.
Yes, Isaac.
Yeah.
and there is something else about the slow burn that I really like. I'm personally a big fan of narrative works, either on the screen or in paper, that take their time. In that, when the big thing occurs, it has far bigger impact. It has this echo that follows it. You have the silence and the calm, and then bam, and
Yeah.
lightning strikes. And
Contrast.
even if you are expecting it, or perhaps when you are expecting it, it has a bigger cloud for you.
We could bring up our old favorite Star Wars. In the start of that film, you've got Luke with his boring life, being a farmer of some kind of moisture farmer or something, and he has to go and check the this stuff in the middle of the desert, and it's just dull, and then things take a, start to happen with his going out and getting the robots and stuff like that, and it's like, well, in the very start of the film, of course, you've got the big battle scene with the spaceships and everything, but then you've got this. It goes back to Tatooine with Luke and everything that's happening there, and that's a really slow kind of thing that slows it right down. So it's a perfect example. Yeah, especially for the modern day, that movie's actually really slow for the first half hour or so. Yeah, things don't take off, with the whole Millennium Falcon and getting to the Death Star and all that kind of stuff until things slowly build up. It's like it picks up pace. Yeah. To some
it starts off very slow after that initial scene. And Alien, like you were talking about, even more so. Last time I watched that, I was watching the timer on the player. And when they land on the planet, so they haven't even encountered an alien yet or anything. Like when they land on the planet, I think it's like an hour in.
Wow.
I'm like, I think I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure it's like an hour or close to an hour. Maybe I'm wrong.
In Maybe some films, you're so focused on...
Cut that part out, man.
You're so focused on one kind of scene that you sort of think, oh, now that's where the film started. When they landed on the planet, when they did this. I was just last night, I was thinking, because I'm putting together my fancy hat with its fancy feathers on there, and I was thinking, oh, Waterloo, that was such a cool film in so many aspects. Fantastic, classic Dino De Laurentiis produced epic. So many things happening in this film. But there's this scene where this Prussian guy strides into this massive ballroom with all these beautifully dressed English soldiers and their wives and girlfriends dancing around, and he's this incredibly ugly big fat man strides in, and he's got this hat with his tall black and white feathers on, and I needed this scene to look at to get inspiration to do my hat with the black and white feathers. But yeah, anyway, he walks into this ballroom, and I thought, oh, that's where the film starts. That's where things happen. And it's bloody 40 minutes into the film. It's not until literally 40 minutes into the film where that scene happens. And that's when things begin to start, because this film is so slow. It's such a slow build-up. But you're not bored.
Yes.
So many things... Not so many things happening, but...
You're into it.
It builds so well that it can justify that. But isn't that weird? Like you with the spaceship scene, that is where you naturally would think that it begins, but no, it's way in the middle of it.
I think it's the chest burster scene that's an hour in.
All right.
I think that's what it is, actually.
Yeah.
Which makes a little more sense.
Yeah.
But even then, it's like,
But intellectually, that's where you think, oh, that's where it's, that's where things start. That's where Alien starts.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the film, but, what you remember of the film.
Yeah.
I mean, in a newer movie where people are worried about it,
But, in the beginning, so, they land on the planet and they're walking around this ship, we assume it is, where they got what they thought was a distress beacon. It turns out it's probably a warning beacon. That whole thing. And you forget about so much of that part of the movie, which is really interesting that you forget about it, because it's an amazing set. It's an amazing just walking through those dark places with that H.R. Geiger textures all over the wall and stuff like that, and what I can they get to that part where they get to that big dead creature chair. If you remember that, I forgot about that.
The space
because they never do. Yeah, and that's such. a weird thing to have in the middle of the movie like that and never talk about it again. You know, like, what is this thing? What are these things? We don't know what they are. And it's not that strange to these people because you get the concept that they've had contact with other alien life before, just not these aliens. But like, still, like, you know, it's just kind of like a throwaway out, and they see that big dead alien in that chair. But still, it's such a cool addition to the movie, that scene, even if they don't do anything with it, you know?
Yeah.
Because as a viewer, you're just like, wow, you know, like, what is this? What are these places? What's that weird glowing blue stuff on the floor? Like, what are those eggs? Like, what are those things you find out?
Yeah.
But it's cool. It's immersive in that they don't feel like they need to answer all. It's neat.
So in a modern story, you'd cut that out. What does this mean? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to the plot, so it's cut out, and we keep going. We move on. It's not a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lately, they also cut stuff from the plot that is considered baggage or unnecessary dressing, and often it takes away from what would make a story actually feel unique and having character and personality. And I remember what I'm thinking of is, I don't know if you guys have seen it. I'm thinking of Mulan 2, not the original feature, but the sequel.
Wow, they did a sequel.
I didn't even know they did one.
Yeah, they have. You're not missing much, unfortunately. And I say unfortunately because if you see the scenes that they cut from the plot, they transform the movie. They make it from something trite and boring that you can absolutely forgo into something that has character and personality and could even immerse you into an element of, I won't say Chinese, but definitely Asian culture that was a thing. Because the plot supposedly is that Mulan and her beau, because for some reason they are not married yet, are supposed to escort 3 princesses to go get married to some idiots that we never learn about. And yeah, but you know for a fact that they are not the ones. You don't need to see them, which is also a thing. Like you are telling me, movie, that I'm not supposed to want them to marry these people, but why?
Yeah.
Why not? At this point, and they go through a sequence of events where the princesses run off and they have to herd them back like it's like herding cats basically for the entire film. And while this is happening, they also have Mulan and Shang, I think his name is, I forget his name all the time, have this argument between them, and then there is this very brief drama where supposedly he might be dead, but you know that he's not dead. There is absolutely no way that he could be, even from the setup. Like, you don't even hold this fraction of a doubt, like, okay, this is modern Disney, they might actually kill him off. You don't even hold that, and it's bland and forgettable immediately. But then when you see the deleted scenes, there are little scenes where they sit around and they talk. The princesses with Mulan and the other guy, Shang, whatever, Herman. They talk, and they actually talk about how they are feeling and how it's not about the other people that we never meet, that they don't want to marry. It's the concept that they are bound by obligation because they have to be filial daughters. And they externalize this element of suffocation and a desire to, at least for a while, not be that until they get there, and that makes them far more relatable as characters,
far more human.
and gives completely different flavor to the film. And it's cut because it's slow. It is a talking scene, so you shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, you're not allowed to humanize the characters. No, it's the plot that's important. You gotta keep going with the damn plot. Whereas I've discovered so many times after all the hundreds of comics that I've done reviews of, the most interesting thing usually is the characters. Usually that's what is compelling. Yeah. It's something
that makes sense.
If you're younger, maybe you focus on plot. Maybe that's a thing. But I think what makes you love a story is a good character. That's the difference between something you just read and you forget and something you read and want to read again.
Read again and remember.
Mm.
Yeah. It's true. And great characters, obviously, is...
Well. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I started already. You just said...
Oh, okay.
Good, yeah.
It can be subtle, you said? I missed it.
Yeah.
Like a good...
I missed the whole thing, so...
So a good character can be subtle. That was it. I'm done.
Yeah. Basically...
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean a larger-than-life, like it has to be a Conan the Barbarian or a Batman or whatever. It can be a... Yeah, it can be a...
Well, Conan the Barbarian is a very subtle character with the portrayal in that film. He's a very...
in the first one.
Subtle, simple. There's not much to him. He hardly speaks.
Right. Yeah, I guess that's true, yeah.
Whereas, say, a character like one of my favorites, Zaphod Beeblebrox in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy film.
Oh, yeah.
He's a very much larger-than-life character, but he's compelling. He steals the film. It's...
right.
It would be a better film if it was just him.
Yeah, he's good. Love that character in the books, too.
Oh, yeah, totally different
but he's
from the books.
Yeah.
But, yeah, beautiful, fantastic. Yeah, so... But a character, that's the thing. You like the character. That's the thing that ties it together. Where if he's larger than life or if he's subtle, in both cases, the character is what makes it compelling, not the story.
That's why you have to take your time. You have to take your time to give the audience the chance to get to know the characters and pick the one that they will identify with, one way or the other. So even if you go fast, you have to pause for a moment, a little bit.
Well done, Tance. You summed it up nicely. Should we stop
Thank
the
you.
Quackcast now?
Yes, let's do it.
You have my permission.
Oh, thank you. We try for that every single time. We've had it, and now we can stop. All right, so this has been Quackcast number 383, a very slow burn of a Quackcast.
Yes, we've been here for many hours.
Oh yeah. Usually
Quackcast.
the Quackcasts, especially this one, are like several hours long. This one's about clocking in at 6 hours now, and I'm cutting it down to 120. So you're just hearing the best bits. Okay.
Some editing to do.
Yeah, quite a lot. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Go watch some good movies and write some good comics.
Do it.